Good evening, everyone. And first of all, I want to thank you all the media, all my media friends for your continuous support. And thank you to my esteemed colleagues and friends, the Honorable Rod Phillips, Minister of Finance, as well as MPP Daisy Wei from Richmond here and MPP Billy Brown from Markham Uniware. Thank you for joining us this ethnic media roundtable tonight. On November 5th, last Thursday, after Minister Phillips released the 2020 budget and specifically Ontario's action plan, protect, support, and recover, we received so much applause from all directions, from healthcare to education, from manufacturing to tourism, from mega city to rural area, and from the wine industry to home builder associations. It provides much needed and timely relief to parents and children, to seniors who want to stay at home longer, to vulnerable group with development challenges, to drivers who are paying high auto insurance, and to brave veterans who sacrifice and save to protect us, and to business owners who struggle to keep their doors open. Both historic measures have been outlined to address some long-standing issues and pandemic challenges, including increasing directed care for long-term care residents for 4 hours per day. For holistic approach to supporting the developmental service sector, big victories for small business on employer health tax, electricity pricing and education property tax, micro-credential retraining program to get people back into workforce with the skills they need, travel tax credit to support hyper-local travel, expanding broadband and cellular access that is vital to underserved areas. Many people use the term historic to describe this project, and I certainly agree. Some people have questions, how could these projects cover each and every sector and address their need? It is because of the countless consultations that the Ministry of Finance has held, and I was in many of those consultations myself. We listened to the business owners, seniors, healthcare workers, industry leaders, and the list that goes on. The effort is endless with unwavering conviction, protect, support, and recovery. So people have said 2020 is a year unlike any other. Every person we know is affected by the pandemic in one way or another. Many people have lost their lives, their loved ones, or their livelihoods. The economic uncertainty and insecurity about health has created an atmosphere of anxiety for many Ontarians. That is why it is important to acknowledge that we have the best and the brightest minds working on our team, and most importantly, committed minds, tackling these challenges to lead the way to our economic and social recovery.
Listen. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Lizzie. Wow. At the end of the day, it's nice to get some applause. Thank you so much, MPP Pang, MPP Wei, MPP Ke, three of my fabulous colleagues at Queen's Park. I have to say, and I will not speak for too long because I want to make sure we have time for the media, but I don't have to, because my colleagues have done such an exceptional job of communicating what we are trying to communicate in this budget. Really, we as a group, as a government led by Premier Ford, made a promise back in March to the people of Ontario. We promised that we would do whatever it took to get the people of Ontario through the pandemic. And that promise was unqualified, unequivocal, and it still stands today. And what we brought out in our budget last week was really the articulation of the next steps in that promise. As has been mentioned, significant dollars and support, over $15 billion to protect our people and our communities, particularly on the health side. $8.3 billion of health spending this year. A total of almost $22 billion in direct and indirect support to communities, to individuals, to workers, to parents, to seniors. And then a very important investment of almost $5 billion, $4.8 billion around recovery. We need to start thinking about the future, and we need to start thinking about it now. So supports for job creators now and in the future. But all of that is really just this next step for us in supporting the people of Ontario and keeping that promise that we all made, that we would do what it took in partnership with other levels of government, the provincial and the federal and the municipal governments working together. So thank you to my colleagues. They're great advocates for their communities, their local communities. I have to say as well, it's a pleasure to have a chance to speak to the Chinese media in Ontario. Such an important community, the Chinese community, and critical to what we're doing to protect and support in terms of the people, but to the recovery as well. The opportunity for Ontario is significant, and the Chinese community is going to be a very important part of leading that. So I'll turn it over. I don't want to spend too much time talking. I'd rather spend time answering questions, and I'm happy to turn it back over, Vincent, to you and the team, and I look forward to the questions today. Thank you for taking the time. And just before I go, thank you as well as members of the media. I always take this opportunity. You have been just fantastic at helping all of us understand through a very complicated time. I think for most of us, we could say the most difficult, complicated economy and certainly health crisis in our lifetimes. But the support of the media in general and the support of the Chinese language media about reaching into our communities and helping people understand, we know it's complicated sometimes. There's new announcements, there's new information, there's rules that our doctors and our scientists want us to hear. There's important programs the government wants to offer, and the media in general and the Chinese language media specifically have been great partners. So I know your job is also to be critical of us and ask us tough questions, and we're going to do that for the next 45 minutes, and that's fantastic. Ask away. We should answer them. But we really appreciate as well that you've been partners in terms of making sure that people know how to stay safe. So thank you for that.
I know that the government is spending more to support the people, support the economy. At the same time, we see the government may lose revenues from like retail sector, commercial property sector, and also business sectors. So that one side you spend more, the other side you may have loss of revenues. And also that people tend to go for more on digital, like buying online, right? So I believe that digital economy may be getting more percentage of the overall economy in the future. So I asked the Minister of Education last month, say that, does the Minister of Education ready to tackle a digital education era? At the same time, Minister, are you ready to take on the challenge of digital economy? Are you able to take care of the lost revenues in the next few years? At the same time, you have to spend more. So that's my question. Thank you.
Great question, Joseph. We are laser focused on making sure that we are setting our economy up to be successful for the future. And all of us right now are trying to understand what are the things that are going to change and what are the things that are going to return back to the way they were before. And of course, nobody knows for sure. But one thing we do know for sure is that connectivity, the ability to be digitally connected, is now a virtual necessity. And the reality is that across Ontario, over 10%, actually 12% is the accurate number, of families, of businesses in Ontario aren't connected sufficiently to broadband, to Wi-Fi, to other things. So one of the things in this budget was a very significant commitment, $680 million, so now a total of $1 billion with some money in my last budget, to support broadband connections and digital connectivity across Ontario. This is the infrastructure of the 21st century. We need to have that kind of connection. We also, we called, as I did last Thursday, on the federal government who'd made promises about more money for broadband investments. And I'm very pleased to say we asked for it last week. They delivered this week. It's great. Usually things don't work that quickly for me in government, but I'll take it when I can get it. So the federal government has also added significant additional dollars for this connectivity, this broadband connectivity. So that's the baseline. We need to make sure that we are connected, but we need to make sure we're competitive as well. That's why doing things like reducing the electricity costs, these are things that we know. Energy and power are going to be very important for our businesses to be able to be competitive. We have some significant initiatives around intellectual property, which I won't go into too much detail because they would take too long, and I don't want to take all the time. But we are great in Canada at developing innovative technology. We're not very good at protecting it. Right? I've done business in places like Taiwan and Israel where they are much better at protecting the value of that intellectual property and then monetizing it and making sure that that value gets transferred. Right. And the last thing I'll say is I've started a major initiative looking at our capital markets. So one of the great advantages Ontario has and Canada has are the Toronto capital markets. Businesses need dollars. It's the blood that has to flow, investment money. But we've seen a decline in the number of IPOs. We've seen a decline in the access to capital for small and medium-sized businesses that grow into the Shopifys and grow into the Research in Motions. So I've got a significant bit of work underway that we will see the fruit of probably in the March budget, which is fundamentally looking at how we make sure those capital markets are there to support our businesses and entrepreneurs so that the capital they need can build those next great companies that I know our entrepreneurs want to build.
But my question is that because the digital economy, I mean, like people work from home, they buy online. They can buy online locally and also buy overseas. That means tax evasions, streams of government revenue. And also many sectors, some sectors may die, replacement, and other sectors in the digital economy. So I believe that maybe 10% digital economy is take up the whole economy. But in the future, it may go up to 30–40%. So does the government really have a strategy or the planning to take care of this change of economy?
So this is something we're absolutely on top of. You are right. There's been a significant impact or increase in people buying. All you have to do is look outside your door and see all the delivery trucks that are coming to people, dropping off a box where they might before have gone to a store. Now, again, we don't know how those change of behaviors are going to reflect into the future. But we are working, the federal government and ourselves are working, looking at what would the tax structures need to be. Places like Quebec have already altered those tax structures, but because it's an international matter, the federal government is taking the lead, as they should, working with other countries, looking at how do we make sure that revenues are collected locally. And then the question of what's going to be the impact on our local businesses. We've initiated a program in partnership with the federal government called Digital Main Street, $57 million that has already taken 20,000 businesses online. So we're taking that great Main Street experience and turning it into an online opportunity so that we can take advantage of those fabulous businesses that we have, but that now have to sell, digitally during this period. Now, how much of that is going to retain after? These are the questions that we all are asking, and I don't have a crystal ball. But I believe in the ingenuity of our businesses to be able to survive then. And then we have to make sure that that translates into revenue to pay for the kinds of services that we want to have in our province. But we're fortunate, what's coming through for us is our investments in healthcare, our investments in education. These are the things that are helping us get through the pandemic. We need to make sure we can still make those investments in the future.
Thank you, Minister, for that.
The government has a crystal ball to tell us when will the pandemic end, and then any confidence to get us back to normal.
Joseph, that's what we all want. And I talk every week to, it's one of the great things about being the Minister of Finance. It's a great honor, as Daisy and Vincent and Billy would know, to represent our communities. And one of the great things about that is that you get a chance to talk to pretty much whomever you want to. Most people return my phone call. And so I do talk regularly every week with a few people from the science community, researchers, people who are investing in building these vaccines and treatments, some brilliant doctors. And, I always ask that question at the end. I said, when will this come to an end? They don't know either. A lot of the most sort of educated people seem to think that, by the middle of next year, we could see vaccines deployed. But there's going to be a recovery period that we're all going to go through as well. there has been the effect of this. And so much of this, people think it's the government in many ways that's making a decision about whether customers are going to businesses and businesses are open. We all know that it's also people's behavior. They have to feel safe, right? And it's going to take a while for that confidence to come back, but it is going to come back. And it's going to come back. And I believe that on the other side of this, we're all going to have a renewed appreciation for our fellow citizens, for our communities. We're all going to come through something together. I tell a little story, Christine, I hope you don't mind, but I like to tell it sometimes. I'm a history buff. And back a number of years ago, I read a book. It was by an American historian about the Spanish flu, which those of you will remember was the last significant pandemic that really hit globally and particularly hit in North America. And this was a story about the American reaction to the Spanish flu. And one of the very interesting things that the historian pointed out was for about a decade after the Spanish flu epidemic ended in about 1921, for about almost 10 years after, nobody talked about it. There was no history. There was no discussion of it. And he asked himself in the book, why was that? And his belief was it was because, pandemics are very difficult things. They make the things that are good suddenly bad, right? Hugging people, handshake, being together with family, all these things that are really good about living become sometimes deadly. It's a very, very disconcerting and upsetting. And the reason that he came to the conclusion that people didn't write any history right after was because, at least in America, people didn't necessarily behave very well. They hid. They didn't help each other. There are stories about people, their neighbors, there'd be no noise, and they'd go in 10 days later and find, the whole family, passed away tragically. So why I tell that story is because we're living in history. We are right now in the middle of it. And we know that, right? And we're going to come through this. Canada's been through tougher things and come through strong. But this is a tough thing. And I think what we all need to do is reflect on how we treat each other, what we can do for our communities, what we can do to help each other, because we are going to come through this. And we're going to want to be able to say to our grandkids or to our kids, you remember, when I read about this history, what did you do? What did you do to help a neighbor? What did you do to help your community? That's the difference. And that's why I talk about, I think, that advantage we have in Canada, Ontario, it's the way we treat each other. We take care of each other. We don't always agree, particularly the media. You should ask us tough questions. You should say we should do more, or we should do less. That's what you should do. But at the end of the day, it's our civil society. It's how we come together. It's how we care for each other. And we all want to be proud of what we did during this time. So that's my best story about the future, because the short answer is I don't have a crystal ball. But I know we're going to come through this. We've been through tough things before.
Thank you so much for that.